Somewhere on a Saudi Arabian tarmac, the smoldering wreck of the most important aircraft in America's Middle East arsenal is still cooling down. Its fuselage is torn open. Its iconic rotating radar dome, the very eye through which the United States Air Force watched, tracked, and commanded its entire regional air war, lies separated from the aircraft's body, shattered and displaced on the concrete below. Serial number 81-0005, an E-3 Sentry AWACS, $500 million of irreplaceable American air power, destroyed not in a dogfight over Iranian airspace, not by a sophisticated air defense system, but on the ground at a base that was supposed to be beyond reach. The date was March 27, 2026, and in the span of a single devastating night, Iran did not simply destroy an airplane. Iran surgically removed the brain of America's air campaign, and the repercussions of that strike are only beginning to be understood. In a moment, you will learn exactly how this happened, precisely why Iran chose this specific target above all others, and most critically why the United States military may not be able to replace what it lost until well into the next decade. This is not a story about one aircraft. This is a story about the single most consequential strike of this entire conflict and what it reveals about the catastrophic vulnerability at the heart of American air power in the 21st century. Prince Sultan Air Base sits deep in the heartland of Saudi Arabia, in the Al-Kharj region of the Riyadh province, hundreds of kilometers from Iranian territory. This is not a forward operating position. This is a strategic rear hub, the kind of installation that military planners historically considered insulated from direct attack. The base is home to the 378th Air Expeditionary Wing, and in the weeks leading up to March 27th, it served as the nerve center for United States air operations across the entire Persian Gulf theater. 6 E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft had been stationed there. They took off daily, climbing to altitude, their massive radar domes rotating at 6 revolutions per minute, sweeping the skies across 400 kilometers in every direction, feeding a continuous, real-time picture of the entire battle space to every single American aircraft operating in the region. Without those aircraft, American fighters are flying partially blind. Tankers cannot be efficiently sequenced. Coalition coordination fractures. The entire architecture of U.S. air superiority begins to collapse inward. Iran knew this. And on the night of March 27th, Iran acted on that knowledge with devastating precision. According to the Associated Press, citing sources familiar with the matter, the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps launched 6 ballistic missiles and 29 armed drones simultaneously at Prince Sultan Air Base. The combination was intentional drones to exhaust and saturate the base's close-in defense systems, ballistic missiles to deliver the killing blow. The strategy is called saturation strike doctrine, and at this very moment, military analysts around the world are reassessing every assumption they ever made about the safety of rear-echelon air bases after watching Iran execute it flawlessly. At least 15 U.S. service members were wounded in the attack, 5 of them seriously. This is not the first time American blood has been spilled at Prince Sultan. A U.S. soldier was killed at this same base in an earlier Iranian strike in the first week of March. The total cost of this war in American personnel now exceeds 300 wounded and 13 killed since Operation Epic Fury began on February 28, 2026. But the human toll, devastating as it is, was not the most strategically significant loss of the night. When the smoke cleared, the imagery told a story that sent shockwaves through every defense ministry in the Western world. Ground-level photographs, first circulated through military social media channels and subsequently verified by multiple open-source intelligence analysts, showed E-3 serial number 81-0005 with its rear fuselage completely burned out and destroyed. The aft section of the aircraft, specifically the reinforced superstructure that supports the rotating AN/APY-2 radar dome, had suffered a catastrophic direct impact. The radome itself, housing the most powerful airborne surveillance radar in the U.S. Air Force inventory, was torn from its support structure, laterally displaced, and rendered permanently inoperable. Multiple KC-135 Stratotanker refueling aircraft were simultaneously destroyed or severely damaged on the same apron. At least one KC-135 was completely obliterated. 3 others were rendered non-operational. Air and Space Forces magazine, one of the most authoritative defense publications in the United States, reviewed the imagery and delivered a stark conclusion. The extent of the damage to the E-3 almost certainly renders it beyond repair. Most people look at the E-3 and see a modified Boeing 707 airliner with a large disc mounted on top. What they do not see is what that disc contains and what it enables. The rotating rotodome houses the AN/APY-2 surveillance radar, a system capable of detecting and simultaneously tracking hundreds of airborne targets, from high-flying bombers to low-observable cruise missiles, skimming the terrain at 50 meters altitude. It can see across international boundaries. It can differentiate between friendly and hostile aircraft with identification friend or foe technology. It fuses data from multiple off-board sensors, satellite feeds, and ground radar networks into a single coherent operational picture that is then transmitted in real time to every aircraft and ground commander within the operational theater. The E-3 is not just a radar. The E-3 is the central nervous system of an entire air campaign. It is the aircraft that tells a fighter pilot where the threat is before the threat can see him. It is the aircraft that sequences tankers for refueling without collision in congested airspace. It is the aircraft that allows a coalition of dozens of aircraft from different nations operating on different frequencies to function as a single, unified fighting force. When you destroy an E-3, you are not shooting down one plane. You are blinding, deafening, and disorienting an entire air campaign simultaneously. This is not a metaphor. This is the operational reality that American commanders are now living with. The destruction of the E-3 did not happen in isolation. It is the most devastating blow in a deliberate, systematic Iranian campaign to dismantle the entire command and intelligence infrastructure that makes American air power function. Analysts at Air and Space Forces magazine have described Iran's approach as an asymmetric counter-air campaign, a methodical effort to identify and eliminate not the American fighters themselves, but the critical enablers without which those fighters cannot fight effectively. The campaign began with Iran's radar network. In the early weeks of Operation Epic Fury, Iranian precision strikes destroyed a $1.1 billion AN FPS-132 radar in Qatar, one of the most powerful ground-based early warning radars in the world. It then destroyed 2 AN/TPY-2 radars, each valued at between $500 million and $1 billion, stationed in Jordan. These are the radars that feed targeting data to the Patriot and THAAD anti-missile systems, protecting American forces and Israeli cities. Their destruction did not merely degrade the air defense network, it began punching holes in it, holes that Iranian ballistic missiles have been methodically exploiting ever since. Israeli sources, according to reporting by Military Watch magazine, have directly linked the destruction of this radar network to the terrifying statistic that now defines this conflict. Iranian missile strikes are achieving an 80% and growing success rate against their intended targets, 80%. In a conflict where the United States and its allies have deployed arguably the most sophisticated air defense architecture ever assembled, Iranian missiles are hitting their targets 4 times out of 5. And every radar that burns, every AWACS that is torn apart on a Saudi tarmac makes that number worse. Prince Sultan Air Base lies several hundred kilometers from the Iranian border. The reach of the ballistic missiles and armed drones that struck it on March 27th is a direct and undeniable message to every U.S. ally in the region. There is no longer a safe rear area. If Iran's precision weapons can travel that distance, penetrate base defenses, and destroy a $500 million aircraft with targeted precision, then no static base, no matter how far from the front, is truly secure. The implications for Allied basing strategy are catastrophic. At this very moment, commanders across the U.S. Central Command area of responsibility are asking a question they never expected to confront. Where exactly can we park our irreplaceable high-value aircraft? The answer, increasingly, appears to be nowhere in the Middle East is truly safe anymore. Military Watch magazine has reported that the destruction of the E-3 may result in U.S. planners being forced to move high-value assets to air bases in Eastern Europe, a decision that would place those aircraft thousands of kilometers further from the fight, dramatically increasing the burden on the already stressed KC-135 tanker fleet and degrading the continuous coverage the AWACS is supposed to provide. The KC-135 Stratotanker is the circulatory system of American air power. Without it, fighters cannot reach distant targets. Strike packages cannot sustain operations over contested airspace. The tanker is, in many ways, just as critical to the air campaign as the AWACS itself. On March 27th, Iran destroyed and damaged multiple KC-135s at Prince Sultan in the same strike that killed the E-3. This was not the first time. In the second week of March, a previous Iranian strike on Prince Sultan damaged at least 5 KC-135s. On March 12th, the KC-135 crashed in western Iraq, killing all 6 airmen aboard. Another had its tail severely damaged in the same incident. The cumulative toll on the tanker fleet is becoming strategically significant. The KC-135 airframe is decades old, maintenance-intensive, and not easily replaced. Its designated successor, the KC-46 Pegasus, has been plagued by technical problems since its inception, limiting the number of aircraft available to fill the gap. The Air Force is now being forced to sustain a high-intensity air campaign with aging, thinning logistical arteries that Iran has specifically and repeatedly targeted. The U.S. Air Force's E-3 Sentry fleet stood at just 16 operational aircraft before March 27th. 16. With mission-capable rates hovering around 56%, meaning barely 9 aircraft were fully operational at any given moment, the fleet was already stretched to its absolute limit. 6 of those 16 had been deployed to Prince Sultan Air Base alone. Serial number 81-0005 is now gone forever. The fleet stands at 15, and 15 becomes fewer with every passing month as more aircraft are retired due to age. The intended replacement, the Boeing E-7 Wedgetail, a modern, far more capable airborne early warning and control platform, only received formal funding authorization in early March of 2026. A production queue already stretches years into the future. The United States Air Force will not field meaningful numbers of E-7 Wedgetails until well into the early to mid-2030s at the most optimistic projections. In the meantime, the Pentagon has signaled its intent to rely on space-based intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems as a bridge capability. Defense experts are blunt in their assessment of that plan. As one senior analyst quoted by Air and Space Forces magazine stated with stark precision, space will be an incredible capability, but it is not here today. And this is an example of how we don't always get to pick the timelines of conflict. The United States is fighting a war right now, and the system it needs to fight that war effectively will not be ready for nearly a decade. That is not a gap, that is a chasm. Operation Epic Fury entered its 5th week with the Pentagon actively weighing the deployment of up to 10,000 additional U.S. troops to the region. The USS Tripoli, carrying more than 2,200 Marines along with F-35B fighter jets, has arrived in the Middle East. A second amphibious group carrying approximately 2,500 Marines is en route. Elements of the Army's 82nd Airborne Division are preparing to deploy. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper declared just 48 hours before the Prince Sultan attack that Iranian missile and drone launches were down more than 90% since the beginning of the conflict. He stated that the United States had damaged or destroyed over 2/3 of Iran's missile, drone, and naval production facilities. His assessment was not wrong, but it missed a critical truth that the events of March 27th have now proven in fire and wreckage. A force does not need to sustain its full strike capacity to land a devastating blow. Iran needed only 6 ballistic missiles and 29 drones to achieve something that no adversary has achieved against the United States Air Force in decades of continuous warfare. Iran destroyed a $500 million AWACS on the ground. It says that the era of parking irreplaceable, high-value command assets on fixed bases and assuming they are safe is over. It says that the combination of precision ballistic missiles and saturation drone attacks can reach through the deepest defensive perimeters and touch the most critical nodes of an opponent's war machine. It says that asymmetric warfare, executed with intelligence, patience, and precision, can neutralize advantages that cost hundreds of billions of dollars to build. China is watching, Russia is taking notes, North Korea is running simulations. Every adversary of the United States is studying the smoldering photographs from Prince Sultan Air Base and asking the same question: what can we learn from this? The United States Air Force built the most powerful and sophisticated battle management architecture in human history. It integrated satellites, ground radars, airborne command posts, tankers, and fifth-generation fighters into a seamless, lethal whole. And Iran, with 6 ballistic missiles and 29 drones, found the single most vulnerable seam in that architecture and drove through it at 500 miles per hour. The countdown has not ended. At this very moment, American planners are reconfiguring their basing posture, scrambling to redistribute their remaining AWACS coverage, and confronting a replacement crisis that has no rapid solution. The air war over the Persian Gulf will continue. But it will continue with one less eye, one less irreplaceable brain guiding it, and the consequences of that absence will be measured not in dollars, but in outcomes, in targets missed, in threats undetected, in aircraft that arrive at the wrong place at the wrong time because the flying radar that should have guided them is no longer there. An empire of air power just lost its crown jewel, and the skies over the Middle East will never look quite the same again. What are your thoughts on this matter? Share your opinions in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like our video, presented by Pivot Analysis. Thank you for choosing us.